Commander Li Huan wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the massive holographic display stretching across the command center wall. Red dots filled the screen like angry stars, each one representing a Veil-Thek warship. The alien fleet was enormous, bigger than anything humanity had ever faced. "How many ships are we looking at?" Li Huan asked, his voice steady despite the knot forming in his stomach. Sergeant Ko Youngmi checked her scanner readings twice before answering. "Sir, our sensors are picking up at least 300 vessels, battleships, cruisers, and support. Craft. This isn't a raid or a show of force, this is a full invasion fleet." The command center buzzed with nervous energy. Officers moved between workstations, their faces grim as they processed the incoming data. Everyone knew this day might come, but seeing it happen felt surreal. Lieutenant Park Minji suddenly straightened at her communications console. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead ship. They're demanding to speak with our highest ranking officials." "Put it through to the main screen," Li Huan ordered. He straightened his uniform and stepped forward, knowing that whatever happened next would determine Earth's fate. The hologram flickered and stabilized, revealing a creature that made everyone in the room take an involuntary step back. War Marshal. Krexova stood nearly 9 feet tall, his 4 muscular arms ending in claws that could tear through steel. His exoskeleton gleamed like black metal, and his compound eyes reflected the bridge lights behind him. Most unsettling were the smaller creatures scurrying around his feet, clearly servants or perhaps pets. "Humans of Earth," Krexvar's voice boomed through the speakers, each word dripping with contempt. "I am War Marshal Krexvar of the Veil-Thek, Hegemony. Your pathetic species has rejected our generous offer of subjugation for the final time." Behind the alien commander, Li Huan could see the bridge of the massive flagship. Alien crew members worked at stations that looked more like organic growths than technology. The walls pulsed with a sickly bioluminescent glow. "You have exactly 72 standard hours to surrender unconditionally," Krexvar continued, raising one of his clawed hands. "If you refuse, we will demonstrate why 12 star systems have already fallen before the might of the hegemony. Your cities will burn, your oceans will boil, and your species will serve us in chains." Ambassador Kim Dae-hoon had been standing quietly in the shadows, but now he stepped into the light. His diplomatic uniform was perfectly pressed, not a single wrinkle visible despite the circumstances. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the tension filling the room. "War Marshal Krexvar," Kim Dae-hoon said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had negotiated with a dozen alien species. "I strongly urge you to reconsider this course of action. Earth has shown considerable restraint in our previous encounters, but that restraint has very definite limits." The alien's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter, though the sound was more like breaking bones. "Restraint? Is that what you call it when your pitiful defense fleets barely managed to scratch the paint on our scout ships? Your entire military couldn't destroy a single one of our reconnaissance vessels." Several of the bridge officers shifted uncomfortably. Everyone remembered the skirmishes from the past year when human ships had engaged small hegemony scouting parties. The official reports had called them tactical withdrawals, but everyone knew the truth. Humanity's conventional forces had been outgunned and outmaneuvered. Kim Dae-hoon's expression remained perfectly calm, though Li Huan noticed the ambassador's hands were clasped tightly behind his back. "War Marshal, what you witnessed were limited. Engagements conducted under very specific rules of engagement. We've been deliberately holding back out of respect for galactic peace and the hope that diplomacy could prevail." "Holding back?" Krexvar's forearms spread wide in a gesture that might have been mocking applause. "What could you possibly be holding back? Your primitive chemical rockets? Your crude energy weapons? We've studied your technology for cycles. You're barely more advanced than the Stone Age species we encountered in the Outer Rim." The alien commander leaned closer to the camera, his compound eyes reflecting like dark mirrors. "Do you want to know what happened to the last species that tried to bargain with us? The Zephyrians thought their underground cities would protect them. We cracked their planet's crust and turned their world into a molten wasteland. The crystalline collective believed their energy beings were immune to physical harm. We developed weapons that could shatter their very essence." Lieutenant Park. Minji was recording everything, her fingers flying over her console as she transmitted the conversation to Earth's leadership. President Chen would need to see this, along with the military high command. Kim Dae-hoon took a small step forward, his voice carrying a warning that few in the room had ever heard from the usually diplomatic ambassador. War Marshal, you're making a grave mistake. Don't confuse our restraint for weakness. Don't mistake our desire for peace as inability to wage war. Krexvar's laughter was like the sound of grinding metal. 72 hours, humans. Spend them preparing your surrender, because when that time expires, we'll show you why the hegemony rules this sector of space. Your species will learn to kneel or it will learn to die. The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the command center in tense silence. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Li Huan turned to his communications officer, his decision already made. Lieutenant Park, send the activation code Teguk Rising to all deep space installations. Priority Alpha, maximum encryption. Park Minji's eyes widened slightly. She had never heard that code before, but the gravity in the commander's voice told her everything she needed to know. Yes, sir. Transmitting now. Across the solar system, from the asteroid belt to the outer planets, installations that had masqueraded as innocent mining operations and research stations for decades received the signal. Deep beneath their civilian facades, systems that had waited patiently in darkness began to power up. The masquerade was finally over. Admiral Cho Soo-young had been staring at the same fake mining reports for 15 years, but today felt different. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago as she watched her screens, waiting for the signal that would change everything. Around her, the command center looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, a boring asteroid mining operation in the middle of nowhere. The massive asteroid they called home was designated Mining Station Alpha 7, just another rock in the belt where crews extracted precious metals for Earth's industries. At least that's what every official document said. The reality was far more interesting. Admiral, incoming priority transmission, Captain Yoon Ji-hoon called from his station. His voice carried the same excitement that had been building in everyone for weeks. They all knew something big was coming. Cho Soo-young turned to face her tactical officer, a man who had pretended to be a mining supervisor for so long that he actually knew how to operate excavation equipment. Put it through. The message was simple, just 2 words that made her heart race. Teguk Rising. Finally, she whispered, then louder. All stations, this is Admiral Cho. The mask comes off now. Operational security is lifted. Show them what we really are. Her fingers moved across the command console she had memorized in the dark. Hidden panels slid open, revealing military-grade controls that had been concealed for over a decade. Around the command center, her crew did the same, transforming from miners into the elite naval officers they had always been. Beginning primary. Transformation sequence, announced Major Lee Seong-ho from the engineering section. All hands prepare for hull reconfiguration. The asteroid around them began to shake and rumble. What had looked like natural rock formations started splitting apart along carefully engineered seams. Massive sections of false stone peeled away like flower petals, revealing the gleaming metal weapons platforms hidden underneath. Through the observation windows, Cho Soo-young watched their neighbors undergo the same transformation. Asteroid mining. Station Beta 12 shed its disguise to reveal a fortress bristling with defensive turrets. Station Gamma 3 opened like a mechanical flower, exposing launch bays that had been carved from solid rock. Railgun batteries coming online, reported Commander Park Ji-young from Weapons Control. Primary capacitors charging. We'll have full power in 6 minutes. The railguns were humanity's proudest achievement, weapons that could accelerate projectiles to 20% of light speed. Each shot carried the kinetic energy of a nuclear weapon, capable of punching through any known shield technology. The aliens had never seen anything like them because humanity had been very careful to keep them hidden. Target acquisition systems are live, added Lieutenant Sung Min-ho. We have full sensor coverage of the approaching fleet. Meanwhile on Mars, Colonel Han Sora stood in what everyone believed was the Martian Atmospheric Research Facility. Scientists came and went, studying weather patterns and atmospheric composition. What they didn't know was that their research Station sat on top of the most sophisticated weapons complex in the solar system. "Colonel, we've received the activation code," her aide, Captain Kim Ji-won, reported. Han Sora nodded and walked to what appeared to be a standard atmospheric monitoring station. Her palm print unlocked hidden controls, and suddenly the quiet research facility became a bustling military command center. "Initiate Protocol 7, she ordered. "Bring all systems online." The ground around the facility began to shift and move. What had looked like natural Martian terrain was actually camouflaged blast doors. They opened in sequence, revealing missile silos that had been excavated in complete secrecy over 2 decades. Each silo contained weapons specifically designed to counter hegemony technology. Human intelligence had spent years analyzing alien shield systems, and these missiles carried warheads that could disrupt the energy patterns that made hegemony defenses so effective. "Missile guidance systems are active," reported Major Choi. "Hyunki, all silos report ready status. How long until the enemy fleet reaches optimal engagement range?" Han Sora asked. 18 hours, Colonel." "Perfect. That gives us time to run full diagnostics on the big guns." In Earth's orbit, Captain Nam Hyun-woo was having his own moment of truth. For 12 years, his ship had been registered as the Merchant, vessel peaceful trader, carrying cargo between Earth and the outer colonies. Every manifest listed mundane supplies like food, medicine, and manufacturing equipment. Today, the lies ended. "Captain, we've received Taeguk Rising," his communications officer announced. Nam Hyun-woo smiled and activated the hidden command console built into his captain's chair. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for combat configuration. The transformation." Was spectacular. The ship's outer hull began to unfold like origami, revealing the sleek lines of a heavy cruiser that had been disguised as a cargo hauler. False panels fell away to expose weapon turrets, sensor arrays, and launch bays for fighter craft. "Cargo holds 7 through 12 are opening," reported his executive officer, Commander Bae Sumin. Fighter squadrons are launching for patrol patterns. What had appeared to be shipping containers were actually hangar bays containing the most advanced fighter craft humanity had ever built. Pilots who had pretended to be cargo handlers for years finally climbed into cockpits they had dreamed of flying in combat. Similar transformations were happening throughout the solar system. The merchant ship Lucky Fortune revealed itself as the destroyer Soul's Hammer. The research vessel Scientific Discovery became the battlecruiser Busan's Pride. A dozen ships that had carried legitimate civilian crews alongside their hidden military personnel now showed their true nature. On Lunar Base, General Moon Sang-ho watched the transformations through his command center's main display. He had coordinated this deception for 20 years, planning for the day when humanity would have to reveal its hand. "Sir, all stations report successful transformation," his aide announced. "Excellent. Signal all commanders that Phase 1 is complete." The masquerade that humanity had maintained for 2 decades was finally over. What the aliens thought they knew about human military capability was about to change dramatically. Every mining station, research facility, and merchant ship had played their part in the greatest deception in human history. The Valtech hegemony had made their biggest mistake by believing humanity's carefully crafted illusion of weakness. They were about to learn that appearances could be very deceiving, and that humans were exceptionally good at playing the long game. War was coming, but humanity was finally ready to fight it with their real weapons. War Marshal Krexavar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death's Herald, feeling more confident than he had in years. His massive invasion fleet stretched across space like a dark cloud, 300 ships of destruction, ready to crush another primitive species. The holographic display showed Earth's pathetic defenses, a few orbital stations, and maybe 50 small warships scattered around their home system. "How refreshing," he muttered to his second-in-command, Sub-Marshal Vextel. "Usually these lesser species put up more of a fight before we arrive. These humans seem to have given up already." His sensor operator, a nervous creature with 6 eyes, suddenly straightened at his station. "War Marshal, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the asteroid belt, multiple sources powering up simultaneously." Krexva waved one of his forearms dismissively. Probably mining equipment shutting down. These cowards are probably hiding in their holes, hoping we'll show mercy. He turned to address his bridge crew. Prepare the plasma cannons. I want to make their surrender as humiliating as possible. The first railgun projectile came from nowhere. It struck the destroyer Bone Crusher at 20% light speed, hitting the ship's center mass with the force of a small sun. The massive warship didn't explode, didn't break apart, didn't even have time to send a distress signal. It simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly by the incredible kinetic energy. What in the name of the dark gods was that? Krexva roared, all four of his arms flailing in shock. Sir, massive weapons platforms are emerging throughout the asteroid belt. His sensor operator screamed, his voice cracking with terror. Our intelligence was completely wrong. These aren't mining stations. They're fortress platforms. The holographic display updated rapidly, showing the true scope of humanity's deception. Dozens of massive weapon installations were shedding their rocky disguises, revealing gleaming metal structures bristling with railgun batteries. Each platform was the size of a small moon, armed with weapons that could punch holes through hegemony battlecruisers. Admiral Cho Soo-young watched the chaos unfold from her command center, now revealed as the nerve center of humanity's most powerful weapons platform. Her tactical display showed every enemy ship in perfect detail, their positions tracked by sensors that had been secretly monitoring alien movements for years. Fire control, this is Admiral Cho, she spoke calmly into her headset. Begin systematic. Targeting of command vessels. Priority on the flagship and carrier groups. Understood, Admiral, came the reply from Master Gunner Oh Seung-min. Railgun batteries Alpha through Delta are locked on target, firing in sequence. The railguns spoke with voices of thunder. Each shot was a streak of pure energy that crossed the void in seconds, carrying enough force to shatter mountains. The projectiles were simple chunks of tungsten, but at 20% light speed, they became weapons of absolute destruction. Captain Nam Hyunwoo's squadron emerged from their hiding places behind Earth's moon, their ships now revealed in their true military configuration. His heavy cruiser, Soul's Revenge, led a formation of destroyers and frigates that had masqueraded as civilian vessels for over a decade. All units, this is Phoenix Leader, he broadcast to his pilots. Remember, your training. These aliens have superior shield technology, but their ships are slow and clumsy. Use hit-and-run tactics, strike fast, then disappear before they can target you. Lieutenant Commander Jung Mirai's fighter squadron screamed past a hegemony battle. Cruiser, their pulse lasers carving deep wounds in the alien ship's hull. Phoenix 7 to Phoenix Leader, their shields can't track our speed. We're too fast for them. The hegemony fleet tried to respond, but their formations were breaking, apart under the unexpected assault. Ships that had been confident in their superiority moments before now found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered by weapons they had never encountered. On Mars, Colonel Hans Sora's missiles began their deadly journey toward the enemy fleet. Each warhead had been specially designed, using intelligence gathered from captured hegemony technology, programmed with specific frequencies that could disrupt alien shield generators. Missile control, this is Colonel Han, she spoke into her communicator. Launch sequence Alpha is away, time to impact, 4 minutes 30 seconds. Major Choi Hyun-ki monitored the missile trajectories from his station. Colonel, all birds are flying true. The enemy is trying to intercept with point defense, but our stealth coating is working perfectly. The missiles were nearly invisible, their surfaces designed to absorb sensor beams and radar signals. By the time the hegemony ships detected them, it was too late to mount an effective defense. War Marshal Krexva's flagship shuddered as a railgun projectile grazed its starboard hull, tearing away armor plating like paper. "Damage report," he bellowed. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, shield generators offline, we're losing atmosphere," his damage control officer reported. "How is this possible?" Krexva stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Red icons were vanishing by the dozens as his ships were destroyed or disabled. Where did these weapons come from? Sub-Marshal Vexthul was studying the sensor readings with growing horror. "Sir, these humans have been deceiving us for years. Those mining stations were weapons platforms. Their merchant ships were warships. Even their research facilities are launching military-grade missiles. Air proximity alarm screamed as Colonel Hansora's missiles reached their targets. The warheads detonated in brilliant flashes of light, each explosion sending out waves of electromagnetic energy that overloaded hegemony shield systems. Ships that had seemed invulnerable moments before suddenly found themselves defenseless. Admiral Cho Su-young allowed herself a small smile as she watched another enemy battleship break apart under concentrated railgun fire. All stations maintain firing pattern Delta. Target their engines and weapon systems. We want survivors to carry word of this defeat back to their masters. Captain Nam Hyunwoo's fighters darted between the larger ships like deadly insects, their weapons finding every weak spot in hegemony armor. Phoenix Squadron, concentrate fire on that carrier. Don't let them launch their fighters. The massive alien carrier tried to bring its weapons to bear, but human ships were simply too fast and agile. Years of studying hegemony tactics had taught humanity exactly how to exploit their enemies' weaknesses. By the end of the 4th hour, the space around Earth was filled with the wreckage of what had once been a proud invasion fleet. Nearly half of Krexvar's ships were destroyed or drifting helplessly, their crews dead or dying in the cold vacuum of space. War Marshal, his communications officer called weakly, we're receiving surrender offers from the human fleet. Krexvar stared at the tactical display showing his decimated forces. The humans weren't even offering surrender. They were demanding it. The species he had thought were primitive cowards had just delivered the most devastating military defeat in hegemony history. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. Lieutenant Commander Oh Jisoo had been counting, down to this moment, for 8 long years. She sat in her cramped office aboard the hegemony supply depot orbiting Krex Prime, surrounded by trade documents and shipping manifests that told the story of her perfect cover. To everyone around her, she was just another human trade liaison, helping to coordinate resource shipments between Earth and the hegemony worlds. The truth was far more dangerous. Her neural implant buzzed softly as the activation signal came through, a coded message hidden in what appeared to be routine shipping data. She touched the small device behind her ear, feeling the familiar tingle as it connected to her nervous system. Activation code confirmed, she whispered into the tiny communicator concealed in her desk lamp. Phoenix cells. Begin operation scattered. Thunder? The words felt strange after years of waiting. Around the depot, alien workers continued their daily routines, unaware that the quiet human woman in the corner office was about to bring their entire supply network crashing down. Oh Jisoo's fingers flew across her computer terminal, accessing systems she had spent years learning to hack. Her position as a trade liaison had given her incredible access to hegemony logistics networks. She knew where every supply ship was headed, which stations needed critical resources, and most importantly, how to make it all stop. Computer, initiate. Emergency shutdown protocol Zeta 7, she commanded in perfect hegemony standard, the alien language she had mastered during her deep cover training. The station's main computer accepted her authorization without question. Why wouldn't it? She had been a trusted employee for nearly a decade. Warning lights began flashing as cargo bay doors sealed shut, trapping supply ships in their berths. Life support systems switched to emergency power, and the station's communication array suddenly went offline. Across 17 different hegemony worlds, similar scenes were playing out. Human agents who had posed as everything from maintenance workers to diplomatic staff were emerging from their covers like deadly flowers blooming in the dark. On the industrial world of Mortex 3, engineer Seo Jung-hwan had spent 6 years working in the main power distribution center. His colleagues thought he was just another boring human technician obsessed with power grid efficiency. They never suspected that he had been quietly mapping every weakness in their infrastructure. Phase 1 complete, he reported into his hidden communicator as the planet's main power grid collapsed. Factories went dark, military bases switched to backup power, and the orbital defense platforms found themselves running on emergency batteries. That would last maybe 12 hours. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Captain Shin Taeho's stealth destroyer Shadow's Edge was closing in on its prey. For 12 years, His ship had masqueraded as the freight hauler Lucky Coin, carrying legitimate cargo while secretly mapping every major shipping route in hegemony space. "Captain, we have visual contact with the fleeing command ship," reported Lieutenant Bayuna from the weapons station. Her fingers danced over controls that had been disguised as cargo manifests for over a decade. "War Marshal Krexvar's flagship is badly damaged, but still trying to reach their stronghold at Vekthar Station." Shin Taiho smiled grimly as he watched the massive alien ship limping through space, trailing atmosphere and debris. The once mighty flagship that had threatened to destroy Earth was now running for its life, trying to reach safety before human hunters caught up. "Not today," he said quietly. "All power to engines. Let's finish what we started." The Shadow's Edge had been built for exactly this kind of pursuit. While it looked like a slow cargo hauler from the outside, its engines were military-grade fusion drives capable of incredible acceleration. The ship's weapons were hidden behind false cargo pods, and its armor was disguised as standard shipping. "Containers. Target is increasing speed," reported Navigation Officer Kim Seoyeon, "but they're still leaking atmosphere. They can't maintain maximum velocity for long." "Perfect. Lieutenant Bay, prepare the hunter-killer missiles. I want them targeted on the flagship's engine section." The missiles that emerged from the Shadow's Edge were works of art, sleek and deadly projectiles designed specifically to hunt down fleeing enemy ships. Each one carried enough explosive power to crack a small moon, and their guidance systems were programmed with detailed knowledge of hegemony ship design. On the planet Zephyros, Major Kang Min-sok was leading his team through the corridors of the regional command center. He had spent 4 years working as a cultural exchange coordinator, supposedly helping to improve relations between humans and the local alien population. "Package secured," he reported into his communicator as his team subdued the last of the command staff. "Hegemony command structure in this sector is neutralized." His soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, their weapons silenced and their movements coordinated like a deadly dance. They had trained for this mission countless times, in secret facilities back on Earth, preparing for the day when they would strike at the heart of enemy territory. "Sir, we've accessed their communication networks," reported Sergeant Lee Wonho, his fingers flying over an alien computer terminal. "We can monitor all military traffic in this sector." The regional command center controlled defensive operations for 6 star systems, coordinating everything from patrol schedules to supply convoys. With it in human hands, the hegemony had effectively lost an entire sector of space. Back in space, Captain Shin Taiho watched as his missiles closed the distance to their target. The War Marshal's flagship tried desperately to shoot them down, but its point defense systems had been damaged in the earlier battle. "Impact in 10 seconds, Lieutenant Bayuna announced. The missiles struck like hammers of the gods, their explosions lighting up space for millions of kilometers. The flagship's engines died in brilliant flashes of plasma, leaving the massive ship drifting helplessly. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the flagship," Communications Officer Park Do-hyun reported. They're asking for mercy." Shin Taiho considered this for a moment. The War Marshal who had threatened to destroy Earth and enslave humanity was now begging for his life. "Tell them their request has been noted and forwarded to Earth Command for consideration." It was a polite way of saying no. Similar pursuits were happening throughout hegemony space as human ships that had pretended to be harmless merchants revealed their true nature. The freight hauler Honest Trade became the destroyer Incheons. Fury, the passenger liner. Peaceful Journey transformed into the cruiser Daegu's Wrath. Each ship carried crews who had studied their enemies for years, learning every weakness and planning for this exact moment. The hegemony had built their empire on the assumption that they were the apex predators of the galaxy. They had never encountered a species that could match their ruthlessness while exceeding their patience. Now, as their supply lines collapsed and their fleets were hunted through space, they were learning that humans were very good at playing the long game. The species they had dismissed as primitive had been planning this counterattack for decades, placing agents and assets throughout hegemony space, like seeds waiting for the right season to bloom. The hunters had indeed become the hunted, and the galaxy was about to witness the most systematic military campaign in recorded history. War Marshal Krexvar had never imagined he would see the inside of a prison cell, much less one designed for creatures of his size and strength. The energy shackles around his forearms hummed with power, designed specifically to contain beings with his enhanced physiology. Every step toward the council chamber felt like walking to his own execution. The Hegemony High Council chamber had once been a symbol of absolute power, where decisions were made that affected billions of lives across dozens of star systems. Now it felt more like a tomb. Of the original 15 council members, only 6 remained alive. The others had died when human strike teams had systematically hunted down hegemony leadership across the galaxy. High Councillor Zexathane, the eldest, member of the council, sat slumped in his ceremonial chair. His once proud bearing had been broken by weeks of constant defeat. Around him, the remaining council members looked like shadows of their former selves. "How did it come to this?" whispered Councillor Vorthak, her voice barely audible. "We ruled 12 star systems. We had the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. We underestimated them," Zexathane replied, his ancient voice filled with regret. "The humans warned us, but we thought it was typical species bluffing. We never imagined they were capable of such deception." The massive doors of the council chamber opened with a sound like thunder, and 3 figures entered. War Marshal Krexvar recognized Ambassador Kim Dae-hoon immediately, but the human looked completely different now. Gone was the diplomatic uniform and peaceful demeanor. Instead, he wore the formal military dress of Earth's unified command, complete with decorations that told the story of humanity's swift and brutal victory. Flanking him were Admiral Cho Soo-young and Colonel Han Sora, both wearing their own military honors. These weren't the same humans who had pleaded for peace just months ago. These were conquerors, victorious warriors who had crushed the greatest military power in the known galaxy. "Honorable Council," Kim Dae-hoon began, his voice carrying an authority that made even the surviving council members flinch. "I want to make one thing perfectly clear. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm not here to discuss terms. I'm here to dictate the conditions of your surrender." High Councillor Zexathane tried to maintain some dignity. "Ambassador Kim, surely we can reach some kind of arrangement. The hegemony has resources, technology, knowledge that could benefit both our species." Kim Dae-hoon's expression didn't change. "The hegemony no longer exists. As of this moment, your coalition is officially dissolved. Every world that was under your control is now free to choose its own destiny." The words hit the council members like physical blows. The empire they had spent centuries building was being erased with a simple declaration. Admiral Cho Soo-young stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "Our fleets now control every major shipping lane in this sector of space. Our agents have systematically dismantled your military infrastructure. Your weapon factories are in ruins. Your communication networks are under our control, and your supply lines no longer exist." She gestured to a holographic display that materialized in the center of the chamber, showing the current state of former hegemony space. Red zones marked areas under direct human control, while blue zones indicated worlds that had already joined the new Terran alliance. "Your choice is simple," the Admiral continued. "Accept these terms and live out your lives in comfortable captivity, or join your War Marshal in a maximum security facility." Colonel Han Sora's hand rested casually on the grip of her sidearm, a gesture that wasn't lost on anyone in the room. "We gave you fair warning before this all began. You were told that human restraint had limits. You chose not to listen, War Marshal." Krexvar finally found his voice. "You cannot simply dissolve galactic governments by force. The other species will never accept human dominance." Kim Dae-hoon smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Marshal, you seem to be under the impression that we're seeking dominance. We're not. We're offering something the hegemony never did: choice." The holographic display changed, showing communication logs from across the galaxy. Dozens of former hegemony worlds were sending messages to Earth, some requesting to join the Terran Alliance, others simply thanking humanity for their liberation. The Crystalline Collective, the Zephyrian Remnant, the Outer Rim Confederacy. They're all sending diplomatic missions to Earth, Kim Dae-hoon explained. Species that were forced to serve the hegemony are celebrating their freedom. Councillor Vorthak leaned forward desperately. What about the worlds that refuse? What about species that choose to remain independent? They're free to do so, Colonel Han Sora replied. We're not the hegemony. We don't force species into submission, but we also don't tolerate aggression against our allies. The holographic display shifted again, showing a remote star system where the Kethvar Dominion had decided to test human resolve. The images were brief but decisive. A small human task force had eliminated an entire battle fleet in less than 6 hours. The Kethvar made the same mistake you did, Admiral Cho Soo-young noted. They thought human victory over the hegemony was luck or a fluke. They learned otherwise. 6 months later, the galaxy had settled into its new reality. Ambassador Kim Dae-hoon stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, humanity's newest deep space facility. The massive structure served as both a diplomatic center and a symbol of the new order, a place where different species could meet as equals rather than conquerors and conquered. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see construction, ships from a dozen different species, working together to build trading posts, research facilities, and communication relays. The Zephyrian crystal builders were collaborating with human engineers to create structures that were both beautiful and functional. Former hegemony shipyards were being converted into peaceful manufacturing centers. Captain Nam Hyunwoo joined him at the observation deck, both men looking older and more weathered than they had before the war. The stress of command and the weight, curved victory had aged them both. Do you think they'll remember the lesson? Nam Hyunwoo asked, watching a patrol of human ships glide silently through the shipping lanes. Kim Dae-hoon was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. They'll remember. More importantly, they'll warn others. The hegemony's mistake was thinking that peaceful species are weak species. And now? Now they know better. Sometimes the best way to ensure lasting peace is to demonstrate exactly what the cost of war can be. Behind them, the daily business of the galaxy continued. Trade convoys moved between star systems without fear of pirates or tribute collectors. Research vessels explored new worlds without worrying about territorial claims. Children of different species played together in the station's recreational areas, growing up in a galaxy where cooperation was valued over conquest. The human fleets that patrolled the space lanes were no longer hidden behind false identities. They moved openly, their presence a reminder of what happened to those who chose aggression over diplomacy. But they were also protectors, ensuring that the smaller, weaker species had the same right to exist as the larger, more powerful ones. The age of human restraint was indeed over, but it had been replaced by something far more dangerous to potential aggressors: human vigilance. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their technology, but their patience and their ability to plan for the long term. Those who chose peace found humanity to be generous allies and reliable partners. Those who chose war discovered why even former enemies now warned against provoking Earth. The lesson had been taught, and the galaxy would not soon forget it. The end.